Hi, everybody. Welcome to Adopt a Gals podcast. I am your host, How is Able.
And I am Famata Warfield. Today, we are going to talk about an important topic when it comes to translational adoption. And the topic is going to be about therapy, taking your entire family to therapy if that's something you can afford. And we feel like it's important to hit on those factors because that's something that both How and I did not necessarily get when it comes to taking your whole family to therapy. When it comes to doing that, I feel like it fosters a better environment for not only for your own children, your biological children, but
Mhm.
your adopted children as well. Having that dynamic helps, again, foster a better understanding and keeps things open for kids to talk about what they're feeling, especially your adopted children adapting to this new environment and people that may not be looking like them and what they're feeling and grieving and anything in that aspect. It just keeps things open.
And when we talk about your whole family, so what we're referring to is you and your spouse, if you have husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever your partner, of course, your adopted children, however many you have, and then
Mhm.
also your biological children as well, if you have them. For myself, I was in therapy. As soon as I got adopted, I went to a group therapy with other adoptees.
Mhm.
I also went to family therapy with me and my parents. However, my adopted sisters, who are biological to my adoptive parents, they
Mhm.
were never a part of the therapeutic process. Part of
Mhm.
that is just because they were heading out to college by the time I got adopted. So, really, there was just such a huge age gap between me and them. So, it was
Mhm.
hard for that process to even play out.
Mhm.
And then I also had individual therapy as well as I got older. But I think that family therapy with just me and my parents was very impactful and powerful. Although I didn't always understand the purpose of therapy when I was young, but I can see how it has created a huge positive impact and the benefits of it in my teenage years and then onwards to young adulthood and to the point that I'm at right now in life.
Mhm.
And to this day, I'm still a huge advocate for individual therapy as well
Mhm.
as therapy with your family.
Mhm. Yes, and when we say therapy, going to therapy, we know that that can be expensive. If therapy is not something you guys are able to afford, I would highly suggest maybe once a week, sit the family down and talk about the week. Was there something big that happened? And just have open discussion. And then whether you are doing that or you are going to actual therapy, it needs to not be an scapegoating type of thing where you are putting more the focus on the adopted child because they are the new thing in the environment that's changing things a little bit, whether it's good or bad, not necessarily making them feel ostracized. Talk to them and have all the other kids be able to participate in the conversation as well. Because one thing that parents need to be aware of when you are bringing a new kid into your household, your biological children are going to feel left out. They're going to feel like, well, the attention is not on me as like it used to be. And
Mhm.
sometimes that can cause friction between the biological and the adopted child, and they can butt heads. So I think therapy in that case not only helps your biological children, but also your adopted children. It creates that nice open bridge that you can talk about, but make sure you don't ostracize and make the adopted child that they're the reason why this is happening and that they're doing something wrong or anything in that way. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. And what else, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, sometimes it can be really hard to navigate these conversations with your adopted
Yeah.
children and your whole family,
Yeah.
especially if your biological children are really young. They don't understand what's going on. They're just excited that maybe another child is involved, or sometimes
Yeah.
they might get a little bit jealous or feel like they're being left out or the attention is no longer on them because there's an additional member of the family. And
Mhm.
so, what I would advise as far as navigating these conversations, if you're not able to afford therapy or anything like that, well, two things before I give you the advice. I would say one, nowadays there's a lot of different resources
Mhm.
for therapy that's affordable by insurance and that's cheap. I understand we have families of six and
Yeah.
5, sometimes even 11, so it can be more expensive.
Yeah.
However, there are resources online, if you do the research, that actually do offer free family therapy as well, and couples therapy and individual therapy as well. So just
Mhm.
make sure that you are doing everything you can to find these type of resources. Sometimes it can be a little bit challenging, but they are out there. Now, the second thing is that when it comes to having conversations with your family at in your house, those
Mhm.
monthly meetings, if it's hard to navigate these conversations or you don't even know what type of topics to talk about, because sometimes the kids might be shy, they don't know how to communicate things that because they don't want to make people uncomfortable, right? Whether that be the biological children or the adopted children, they just want things to be peaceful. I would say try to make it a fun experience and maybe a game out of it. There are plenty of cardboard games, just card games that are focused on helping families connect with each other and get to know each other more. So they basically, for example, card game examples would be a game where it has like various different questions that each person, family member takes a turn answering, and it has like deep questions and also lighter or fun questions just to get to know each other, feel more connected.
Yeah.
And I feel like the reason why it's so important to have these conversations, especially when you first adopt, is because it makes everyone part of the process and not feel left
Yeah.
out.
Yes.
Everyone feels like they understand each other's
Yes.
roles, why their parents decided to adopt, and it puts everything out in the open so that there is not a lot of need for secrecy or questioning. I feel like to a certain degree, when I was younger, my siblings didn't understand why I was adopted, why my parents needed to adopt, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And I honestly never took the opportunity or chance to ask my siblings what their experience was like
Yeah.
being the biological children. What were their thoughts on the whole adoption process? I never got the chance to ask them that. So I think it's great to have these conversations really early on.
Absolutely. You hit on everything that needed to be added. And I also want to encourage, since translational adoption, that's a topic we're talking about, it
Mhm.
is important to talk about race. I feel like during these conversations in therapy, we need to talk about race. We need to talk about that your kids, one, your adopted kid, if they don't like us, I didn't really know what race was when I got adopted and moved to the
Same.
States.
Mhm.
Talk about race with them and also talk about race with your biological kids and say, hey, your sibling may be experiencing this because of their skin color, because of this system that we live in. So look out for that. So I feel like having conversations in that way, not only like again, fostering a better environment. So kids, your biological children are understanding why their sibling is facing different treatment. For example, my adopted brother and my other brother, who's a biological my parents, him, they used to go shopping together, and they would always stop my black brother. And I don't this happened when they were older, so they were able to understand. But if
Mhm.
something like that was to happen when they were younger, I don't think that was a conversation that he was well aware of. But then again, he was young. That was the other thing I was gonna add.
Oh, so they would stop him because they thought he was a
Yeah.
sibling or something? Oh, I think one thing I would add is, especially if you've adopted children that don't look like you, they're a different culture and race, and they're women, especially, even for men, but especially for women, self-esteem, confidence as far as what
Yeah.
they look like, positive representation. I think it's good to check in because it's small things that maybe to you as an adopted parents
Mhm.
doesn't really seem like it would be a big deal. That actually is a big deal. For me, hair was a big thing. I used to get bullied so much for my hair, and
Yeah.
my parents didn't know how to take care of my hair. You know what I mean? Now they try to find stylists and stuff like that that would be able to take care of my hair, but that was a big thing. And I wish we would have had more conversations about that. Colorism was a big thing for me
Yeah.
too. And I tried to explain that to my family. And because they just didn't understand, they never experienced that. It was hard for them to have that conversation. That's why it is important to have a therapist that maybe reflects your adopted child's cultural background, because
Mhm.
there's conversations that are more pertaining
Yeah.
to certain cultural, societal norms and standards. So I
Yeah.
think it's important if you can do that, but it's not necessary to have a therapist that looks like your child. As long as you have a therapist, I think that's a great step in the right direction.
I think some of that may be depending on, I think if you could find a therapist that does look like your child, they can they can talk about certain things that your child may not understand how to talk about, how to
Yeah.
voice. Like when I
Mhm.
was younger, if I had a Black therapist, there were certain things I was feeling that my Black therapist would understand and be like, "Is this what you're feeling?" Be like, "Oh, so having a therapist that looks like your child is, I think, is helpful." But I said having a therapist that just having a therapist, that's fine too, but it'd be more helpful to have a therapist that does look like your child, because then that way they can teach you things, you, the adoptee, that your child does not know about racism in America, that they can explain better to your adopted parents. And also another thing that I want to add when it comes to having these conversations in therapy, talk to your biological children about how much attention your new adopted child is going to get. You have to let them know, because they're going to feel ostracized and left out, because they're going to feel like, oh, well, they're getting all the attention, and they're going to get jealous. Let them know, well, for me, I went through traumatic things, and I was getting a lot of attention from my parents, and that caused jealousy, that caused sibling rivalry. And I don't know if my parents talked to my biological children about it. I don't know what conversation they had, but I feel like it's very important to let them know, hey, your new sibling went through a lot of stuff, and so the
Mhm.
reason why she's getting this much attention is because we're trying to help her out with that. And
Mhm.
if you went through something like that too, we would be focusing more on you as well. But I
Mhm.
want you to know we haven't forgotten about you, and we still want to have time with you. But sometimes it's going to seem like we love them more, or we are paying more attention to them, and it's not just because we're just doing it because we don't love you anymore. We do love you. So I feel like just keeping an open mind, and don't be afraid to talk about stuff. Talk
Mhm.
about everything, because that's, I feel like, being in a family when you're hiding and you're secretive about things, or maybe we don't want to touch on certain things because we don't want people to feel, we don't want the siblings to feel like that. No, talk about it, because that creates better understanding, and the children can grow up and have a different relationship, and
Right.
understand each other in a better way. So talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about some of that stuff.
I so agree with that because the more understanding every person in the family has
Yeah.
with each other, the less fear they're going to have, right?
Yes.
Because if you have, let's say, Black adopted children and their siblings are your biological siblings are, or your
Hmm.
biological children are white, just for example, right? It could be Asian and white or whatever. If your biological children don't understand some of these conversations about race and whatnot, they'll get scared. They don't want to ask questions because they don't
Yeah.
want to offend. Then it
Yeah.
just creates a bigger and bigger bridge
Yeah.
versus putting out everything on the table. Hey, here's the reality, here's the situation. Might be some times where your adoptive sibling might not want to hang out with they might want to hang out with people that look more like them, but that's okay. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean that they don't like you or anything like
Yeah.
that. They just connect with this group at this period of time in their life.
Yeah.
Having your understanding, again, I think it's a bonding experience for everybody, and you grow up understanding each other's boundaries, understanding each other's
Yes.
realities, and that
Yes.
your relationship might look different, but it's still okay to have that bond and
Mhm.
that relationship. Y'all don't have to grow up to be best friends as
Yeah.
children, right? Because you have different realities, but
Mhm.
at least you have understanding. You can support each other versus just not having relationships at all. There's a lot of adoptees who don't have relationships with their adoptive siblings, right?
Mhm.
So, especially transracial adoption.
And lastly, the thing that I want to add, you as the parent, it's imperative that you keep an open mind during this. We don't want you to get in your mind where you're going to feel offended about certain stuff. Please keep
Mhm.
an open mind and know that you're not a bad parent if your child says certain things, or that you don't feel like you're doing good enough or anything. That's not what it is. Things just have to be talked about and understood. So if you can keep your emotions in line and checked during these sessions, and when your children are talking, please be cognizant and be open to that, so you can have a better experience with your family.
That's so true. And just my last word is the biggest thing whenever you're having these conversations, let's say you decide
Mhm.
to play a board game or you're just having a conversation, you're going through therapy and you're learning and discovering all these things from your adoptive child where it may
Mhm.
make you feel uncomfortable or may make you feel like you're
Yeah.
not being appreciated or being
Yes.
seen or valued.
Mhm.
Just know that the most important thing that you can do for your relationship with your adoptive child is to
Mhm.
not shame them for their
Yeah.
feelings, to not shame them for their experiences, and
Mhm.
at some point, things will turn around. You just have to be
Mhm,
patient, but
mhm,
shaming is not the way to go because it just creates a bigger bridge between you and them to the point where you guys will no longer have a relationship. So accept it, even if your adoptive child is like, "I hate you," or whatever. This is
no
real.
judgment.
A lot of this is something that's real for both adopted kids and biological kids. They're gonna tell you they hate
Yeah,
you, they can't stand
yeah,
you, all these nasty things that
mhm,
maybe they don't necessarily mean, but they don't know how to cope or communicate effectively. So they're gonna say some pretty harsh things, but you at the end of the day, try as hard as you can to not shame those feelings, those thoughts, and
mhm,
figure out a way to navigate those conversations with a therapist. That's why a therapist is there
yes,
so that you can have sanity, the kids can
mhm.
feel like they're being understood and
And I'm gonna just leave it at this. And also, you as the parents, you together should be in therapy with by yourselves because I feel like parents need to get you need therapy too
yeah,
during this session because they're human beings as well, and they're going through things. This is new to them, so I definitely also encourage. We definitely encourage you as the parents go
yes.
to therapy
Do
too
it,
by yourself because
do it.
this is gonna be a roller coaster, and we understand and we get it and we see you. And if you guys have any questions at all, don't be afraid to ask us the tough questions. Email us, put it in the comment section. We're here to help you guys foster a better relationship between you and your adopted child and your family in whole. So that's it for today. That is everything
Thank
that we
you
gotta
so much.
say. Like I said, questions, let us know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, tell your friends and family members. And thank you for watching us today.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Bye.